My name is Patty. I'm a nurse. This is Isaac Sandoval. He's 6 years old and he has infantile Tay-Sachs. Isaac is our leading man today in a demonstration of G-tubes. The purpose of a G-tube, is to administer food and nutrition, hydration, and medication while decreasing the risk of aspiration because it bypasses the mouth, so they don't have the risk of having it go down the wrong pipe and into their lungs, causing pneumonias. And here is where Isaac keeps his G-tube, right here in his tummy. So first of all, I want to show you what a G-tube is. This is a G-tube. It's about as long as my finger, probably my pinky. It's made of silicone and it's flexible. And the surgeon, to place the G-tube, makes an incision in the abdominal wall and slips the G-tube through the incision into the stomach. So we're pretending this is the abdominal wall and under here is the stomach. The G-tube has 2 little ports, and once he puts the G-tube in, he inflates a little balloon, and that's what keeps the G-tube from coming out. So again, this is the tummy wall, this is the abdominal wall, this side is the tummy, and you can see there's a little balloon here, and that's what keeps the tube from coming out. But it's still flexible, it's not stiff. So the inflated tube, balloon, keeps the tube from falling out, but sometimes it can get pulled, or the tube can pop, and I'm just going to let the air out of this one. So, and this little G-tube can come out. And once it comes out, the interesting thing about the G-tube is it makes a track like a pierced earring would, and you can just put the tube right back in. And when you get it back in, you'll know you have it in the right spot, because when you open this up and hook up a tube, tummy contents will come out. And that's how you can verify that it's in the right spot. And then you just inflate this little balloon again. We'll do it like this. And it works fine. And that's how it stays in. If you can't get the tube back in, it's no big deal because it's just going to seal off. Then you would go back to the doctor and they would put it in for you. But this can be changed comfortably at home. This is the G-tube extension. It fits into the top of this tube. This is what's on the abdominal wall. It has a little button with a cap on it. You can uncap it, and then you hook in this thing. It just turns and locks. And now you're able to give food. This is just water, but I'm going to let you see how it comes out. I didn't want to squirt Isaac, but we'll go over here. You can see where the fluid is coming out of the bottom of the tube, right like that. And that's how it would go into his stomach, this being his stomach. All right? And then when you're done, you just disconnect it and put your cap back on. Right, Isaac? So Isaac's button is just like the one I showed you, and it has a valve in it. I can open this up and tummy contents won't come out because it has a valve in it. So this is Isaac's tube feeding setup. Here's the feeding bag. Got a little bit of his food in it. And here is his extension. So when Isaac's ready to eat, we unclamp this. We slowly insert this right in here. It doesn't hurt at all. Turn it to lock it so it can't come out. And then you'd open it here. Now let's say Isaac needs to, he's going to burp. And so all I need to do is unclamp this and air can come out. He doesn't have to burp right now, so you're not going to see anything. And if Isaac needed to throw up, I would unclamp this tube and turn Isaac on his side, and any tummy contents that's in there would drain out. That keeps him from throwing up and then inhaling it and having it go into his lungs, which is aspiration. When Isaac gets his tube feedings, his mom puts his food in this bag. Here's Isaac's tube feeding machine. So when Isaac is going to get something to eat, and it's going to go over a period of time, his mom will put the food in this feeding bag, and then she loads the tube feeding into this kangaroo pump. This is actually an Affinity pump. And it's easy to put in. it stretches over here and clips into place. You turn the pump on, and the bag has the food in it. This one doesn't. And then you set the time, the rate you want it to go at. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to prime Isaac's pump because Isaac's going to need some, it's full of air, we don't want him to get air. So we would put water in here, we can do that. To prime it, you just hit the priming button. And it's going to pump the food through, this, in this case the water, all the way through. Right, Isaac? We don't want you to get air in your tummy. So it's just going to get the fluid going all the way through the bag, or through the tubing, so that when it starts pumping food, Isaac only gets fluid and no air. If he gets air in his tummy, he's going to be uncomfortable. Right, sweetheart? And it takes a little while to prime it. Alrighty. Now we're gonna hook his tube feeding up to his little tube. This tube has 2 ports. This is the extension tubing here. We connected it to his G tube. It's got 2 ports. The bigger one is used to connect the tube feeding. And now this smaller port can be opened up to administer medications. You can just stick your little syringe in here, right, Isaac? That's how Mommy gives you your medicine. And you can do that while the pump is running. So we're going to unclamp this, and then we'll set a rate. This one is set at 275 cc's an hour. And then you put in a volume of how much you want him to get. Last time, this is his total for the day. We'll just give you a little bit. All right, and then here we go, we hit run. And then the pump will start pushing the fluid into Isaac's tummy. And it'll go at the rate that you put in. When it's done, it'll beep stop. And then when you're done, you take a syringe full of water. You're going to clamp this to the extension tubing, because if you don't clamp it, fluid will come out. You clamp that. We're going to turn this off, plug this. We'll flush the tubing right here with the med port. We'll flush it with water right here. Just going to demonstrate. And once it's flushed and clear, we can go back to taking this out. It's all right, sweetheart. You have to unwrap it, and it just clicks out. And then all you need to do is cap the tube and you're done. Right, Isaac? Isaac has a Nissen. A Nissen is a procedure that's done that tightens up the esophageal sphincter. That's from your throat down to your stomach. You go through the esophagus, there's a sphincter. The Nissen, or fundoplication, tightens that up so food can't come up from the stomach into the mouth and he could potentially aspirate it. But you don't have to have a Nissen procedure. You can just have the tube placed, or you can have the tube and the Nissen. But we definitely don't want to get any air in Isaac's tummy because he doesn't have any way to burp it out. And that's why when he does have a big full tummy, we can put this tube in, just like we would if we were feeding him. Right, Isaac? Because sometimes you have to burp. And open this up and let the fluid come out, or the air. And Isaac likes to burp, especially when he's flying, right, Isaac? When you take off and when you land. When you have just the tube placed and you don't have a Nissen, you need to be aware of the fact that food in the stomach still has a pathway that can go up, and it could go up into the child's throat and possibly down into their lungs when they're weak. So you want to feed them when they're more propped up, so gravity works in their favor. And if you feed them too much too fast, it can cause it to go up. So you'd want to monitor if the child looks like they're starting to choke or cough, then you would know that it's coming back up. Another trick, and this is very old school nursing from way back in the day, we would put blue food coloring in the food because nothing in your body is blue. And if you have blue in your mouth and you're giving the food in the stomach, you know that the food is coming back up. And then you know that your child probably needs a Nissen, or they need to have smaller tube feeds, or they need to have a GJ tube where the food will go down beyond. and that's why we use the blue food coloring. There's another kind of a tube called a GJ tube. It looks a lot like Isaac's tube, but it has two ports. Isaac has one here. The GJ tube has another tube on the other side, another port. And the GJ tube differs from the G tube because the GJ tube has one port that goes into the stomach that can be used for bolus feeds, for big feeds. And then it has a little tiny hose that goes into the jejunum, which is the small intestine, and that can be also used for feeds. The difference between these two tubes are the tube that goes into the small intestine can't take the volume of fluid at a time that the tummy tube can take. So Isaac, if he had that kind of tube, would only be able to get about 50 cc's an hour in his J tube. But in his tummy, he can get about 250 cc's an hour in that, because his tummy can hold more. You can put anything in either one of these tubes. Isaac doesn't get formula. Isaac gets regular food. His mom buys meat and vegetables and puts in turmeric sometimes and garlic, and she puts it in a blender, and Isaac gets a blended food. He gets a good diet. You get avocado and everything, don't you, sweetheart?
Food here.
You can use the tube feeding, the GJ tube and the G tube, for food and medication. A lot of people use formula like Pediasure or Keto-Cal, that's a ketogenic diet powder. Isaac gets regular food. His mom goes to the store, he's on an organic diet, and she gets organic meat and organic vegetables and organic fruits. Not so much fruits, he's a vegetable guy. And she blends it all in a blender and then heats it up, and he gets that right through the tube. He gets avocado oil and turmeric and garlic and all his essential oils and any kind of medications he needs. One of the nice things about the G tube is it's very difficult. If the tube gets clogged, it gets clogged in this little thing, the connector, the thing that connects to the port, because if it can't go through here, it's not going to get into the stomach and clog that port. So usually if the tube machine beeps plugged or occluded, if you disconnect this and push water fluid, you'll be able to pop out whatever it is in there that's plugged. Sometimes medications can not dissolve well and sort of gump this up. But it rarely gets plugged in the tummy, in the tube, the part that's in the stomach, because it first has to go through this tiny thing, and that's where it usually gets clogged. So it's good for just about everything, but you can also use it for just fluid. You know, if just for a drink of water, Isaac can't drink water, and if he needs extra fluid, if it's a hot day, you can get just water through there, and that'll keep him well hydrated. If it's a hot day and Isaac needs a little bit of water, we can do it with this fluid bolus. Right, Isaac? It's the same thing. It's one short tube, and I'll show it to you. It's got the same kind of connector, this connector. It goes right into his tube, just like the other one. Turn it to lock it in. This is how I would vent his tube as well. You can kind of see it venting now. If you wanted to drain this. But if I needed to give Isaac some fluid, I would prime this, I'd put fluid in this syringe and prime this tube and hook it up to Isaac and then let the fluid just drain into his tummy just by gravity. To prime this tube, to give Isaac a drink of water, the tube is clamped. This is the tube that's going to go into Isaac's tummy. And it's clamped. I'm going to put this on it. I'll put a little fluid in here. That's just water. Yeah. And then, so I put water in here. I'm going to unclamp this and let all the air out until water comes in. Then I know the tube is primed. And then I would hook it up to his tummy and let the fluid go in. And that'll help keep him hydrated. That would be a gravity food feeding right there. And then it's the same thing. Just take it out and cap it, and then he's done. So I would use, there are different reasons for using different things. This little bolus for fluid is perfect for a drink of water or a quick medication or a snack. The tube feeding, this one that comes on the pump, is good for if he's going to get like his full meal and you want it to go, if you want him to get, say, the equivalent of a can of pop, that's about the size of a full meal for Isaac, and you'd have it set to run over 45 minutes, that would be his dinner time, then the pump will just pump it in over that period of time. Another way you could do it, and we don't have that setup, is there's a bag like this, and you could hook it on a pole or something, and it has a roller clamp, and you can kind of let it just go by gravity. Isaac can still use his mouth for food, even though he has this tummy tube. But now when Isaac uses his mouth, food is for fun. It's because he likes the taste of it, and it helps him use his muscles and with his secretions. But he doesn't have to, his mom and Isaac don't have to worry about spending a lot of time trying to get him to swallow his food and his medicine, because they can bypass all of that difficult stuff and go right to the tummy. It frees up a lot of time for Isaac to do stuff that he enjoys doing instead of trying to swallow medicine that tastes yucky. Right, Isaac? Okay. So this little tube is very easy to take care of. You can see Isaac's skin is very clear. I can tip the tube back a little bit and see right around the site the little hole, and it's clean, it looks beautiful. But sometimes it gets a little red around there, and you can take a little Q-tip and some soap and water and wash around there if you want. Sometimes you need to put a little bacitracin if it's a little red. But you don't have to cover it. Isaac can go swimming, he can go in the pool, he can go in the ocean, he can go in the lake. Do you like going in the lake? And he can take a bath, and it can get just as wet as can be, and just dry it off like you would dry off any part of your body, right, Isaac? So yeah, we don't do anything to cover these. They don't. I know sometimes some people want to put a little piece of gauze underneath here, and you can get a split piece of gauze that'll fit underneath here, but that isn't always necessary, and sometimes contraindicated is if you look at this tube. It's put in, they're varying lengths. And when the surgeon puts the tube in, he chooses the one that's long enough to fit in your child's stomach, so it goes through the stomach wall. If you put pads underneath here, it pulls that balloon up on the skin, and it can actually damage the tissue. And it could make it can certainly cause inflammation and pain, but it also can cause the tube to come through like this, if you put too much stuff under here. So when the surgeon puts it in, he kind of gauges how far you want it. I don't know, a good analogy is a pierced earring. If you've ever had a pierced earring, you can have an earring that has a long post, and you can put the back on the post and leave it right at the notch, and the earring kind of flips a little forward, but it's not going to fall out. Or you can press the post all the way up. If you press the post all the way up, the back of the earring all the way up to the ear, it irritates your ear. And so if there's a little bit of play here, that's okay. It doesn't need to be flush. And putting other stuff underneath here might actually cause damage to the tissue, pulling the tubes forward. So we don't do that. Now, if there was a lot of irritation here, the doctor might say to put a little bacitracin or something and then put a little gauze pad there if this silicone is causing some irritation. But usually they keep enough play. So this tube needs to be changed out about once every 3 months, and it can be done in the doctor's office. It's not a surgical procedure. It just involves taking a syringe, deflating that little balloon, and pulling it out, and then putting a new one in, and inflating the balloon again. And the reason you would need to change this out is they get gunky. It's in the stomach, they get grody, and they need to just be cleaned up and changed out. These things, all of this other equipment, can be washed and reused, but you wouldn't want to reuse it a lot because you don't want to introduce bacteria into their stomach. And so we would change. I don't know how often Isaac's family changes his bags. A lot of it depends on your insurance coverage. If you have access to a new bag every day, you'd use a new bag every day. But you don't necessarily need to as long as you keep it clean. These tubes need to be changed out about every 3-4 months. It can be done at home if you're comfortable with it, but it also can be done in the doctor's office. And all you have to do is deflate this balloon, pull the tube out, and then slide another one in. The GJ tube is different because it has a little tube that goes into the intestine. That has to be done under fluoroscopy so the doctors can see that the tube is going into the right spot in the intestine. So that one definitely has to be changed out in a hospital. It's not a surgery and it's a 5-minute procedure, but they just need to make sure the tube is going in the right spot. But this one sometimes falls out and you can change it at home. And a GJ tube needs to be changed the same frequency as this tube, about every 4 months, 3 to 4 months. The purpose of a feeding tube is to promote adequate nutrition, hydration, and medication delivery while reducing the risk of aspiration. I think that's so important. And how everybody arrives at the decision to use a tube is different. Some children don't need G tubes, some people do. Some parents decide not to get them. But I'm gonna just talk about Julie Bin. Her daughter Dakota had juvenile Tay-Sachs, and she and her husband Ken did not want to initially use, they didn't want to use a feeding tube. They were hopeful that Dakota wouldn't need one. And as Dakota's condition progressed, it took longer and longer for Dakota to be able to eat. Her muscles just weren't working well. And Julie said that they would barely finish breakfast and morning meds, and it would be time to start lunch. So feeding was taking all day. And one day they took Dakota to the zoo, and it was very hot. And she said that she was so worried Dakota would get dehydrated, they spent the entire outing trying to give Dakota sips of water. And it was then that they decided to give Dakota a G-tube. And from that moment on, then Dakota was she was still able to eat, she was still able to play, she was still able to, go to her little school, but all of her meds and her nutrition needs were met through the tube, and they didn't have to spend all day trying to get her to eat and worry about her aspirating. So it freed up Dakota to have more time to do the stuff she liked, and that was important for their family. When you decide to put a tube in to assist with feeding is important. If you wait until the child is too weak, then it's difficult to put it in because it becomes harder for the child to go through the whole process of having the surgery. You can put it in anytime. I mean, some of the kids have their tubes put in early while they're still healthy because it's an easier procedure, and then they don't need them for anything for a while. You don't have to do anything to maintain it.